So, at the risk of being trite or hackneyed, prayer changes things. I mean, it really can. It can show up in all kinds of ways. Some of it's subjective, in terms of our experience of how engaging in some form of prayer can change something internal for us or can shift things in our world. Studies get done on people praying all these different forms of prayer and meditation. And, so like if someone is engaged in meditation and next to them someone's working on some task like writing or studying, these studies have shown that the actual proximity to someone who's engaged in meditation helps us shift things for people near them. Margaret Silf, in this book, Close to the Heart, she quotes Charles Eliot, who wrote this other book called Praying the Kingdom. The kingdom, or I'll call it the kingdom, is not some kind of extraterrestrial entity that will be superimposed on the world. Nor is it a process of spiritual or internal change that will leave the outer realities looking much the same. It is the liberation of the world we live in, know, touch, smell, suffer, from all that corrupts and destroys it. It's the liberation of the world we know from all that corrupts or destroys it. So she goes on to talk about some practices of how, a life of prayer can change the world. One of the practices she calls is this idea of like the shrinking world method. So in a world where there's so much awry, one of our members at the church, every time we gather, says we need to pray for the situation of our world, which we do in practice. The shrinking world method is a way of hearing the news or listening to the situations in the world and trying to find something tangible, like a person, a story of that person who's experiencing hardship or suffering or difficulty. Maybe it's as a result of fire or flood. Maybe it's as a result of a health crisis, an illness. Maybe it's as a result of some injustice, some effect of poverty or inequality. So, as an alternative to praying for and being concerned about things in a general sense, the shrinking world idea draws us down to one person's experience or situation. And it might be someone who's the victim of some tragedy, or it might be the perpetrator of some tragedy. It might be a person who's seemingly, at least by the standards of the world, powerless, or it might be somebody who's more powerful than anyone else, according to the standards of the world. And so in the prayer, we'd spend some time considering the specifics of that person's life. Maybe it's the way they carry themselves, or the situation with which they struggle. Maybe it's the tone of their voice that we catch in the news, the content of their character that we read about in an article. And instead of being a generalist in our prayer. In this practice, we'd be specific. We try to imagine their life at home. We'd consider their challenges that they face today. We think about what weighs on their heart, what's engaging them in their mind, and what's at play in their soul. To the degree that we can call that to our own heart or mind or soul. And then be present to them and to God in prayer. Because it can be a shrinking world. And as we do so, the kingdom of God, it's already coming. Blessings on your day.